Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible to bring? Fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not just Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they don't want you to have just these two sources whenever I try to prove out. It's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man.
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More eruptions, whatever.
Like 8 powers kind of.
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Puma Region 2-3 within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
that's that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out. Well, it all depends on what the meaning of is, I guess. So, we're live. It's Thursday night, UCY.TV radio, as usual. It is the Ochelli Effect. I'm Chuck Ochelli. Tonight I'm going to try to bring you, and we'll see how it goes. But I think, Mr. Leaf here is about to join me. Let's see. Lee, is that you?
Yeah, that's me, man.
Oh, okay, brother. Well, I was just in the middle of my intro. I saw you come up, and then I saw you disappear, so I wasn't sure what happened.
Yeah, I tried it with the Skype, and then it said the call failed, so I just called it. Tried to Skype into it instead of calling it, so I just called it now.
That's cool, man. Not a problem. I was just about to introduce you. I mean, do you want to introduce yourself, or what?
Well, I am Leap Here, the Mouth. I'm the host of Last Voice for Liberty, Date Night with the Constitution on NWO Truth Radio, and the Friday Night Super Show, which is on NWO Truth and Truth Emerges Radio. I'm also a co-owner of Truth Emerges Radio, and practically half insane.
Well, I don't know about that, but I gotta say you're one of the more angry guys I've encountered lately, but it doesn't mean you're crazy. I mean, after all, you gotta be crazy if you're not pissed off at the way things look, the way I see it.
That's for sure. It just, things start to really drive me nuts after a while, and I get the feeling about midway through the day after reading and studying, and the project I'm working on right now, and I think it might drive me crazy, it really might.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get too bogged down in that because I'd rather give you a break from it, bro, because you're in the middle of something that, listen, I took 20 years studying the JFK assassination, and I don't even want to touch what you're doing right now. So, it's pretty bad if the guy who's sitting there dealing with bullet lead analysis and, and neutron activation tests and everything else for, decades is not willing to dig into what you're digging into. But you want to explain that to the listeners a little bit?
We kicked off a series on Monday night on the Last Voice for Liberty on Truth Emerges Radio, to find out who are you really voting for. And so we are I'm, elbow deep up into, looking into each and every state's, senator and congressman and who is actually backing their campaigns. Because these are the people that are actually calling the shots and making the rules. These are the people that we're actually voting for. Okay, and with this last election coming up, which I believe it's going to be the last election here in 2014, I think that people need to have one more chance, just one last chance to be informed enough to know exactly who you're voting for.
So you don't even think we're going to get to the possible Hitler versus Jebby Boy, showdown in 2016 at all during that selection?
I think that the Russian petro ruble that's being established between Russia, China, Germany, and Iran, and a few other countries, is going to collapse the United States dollar, and they will effectively suspend everything and put us all under martial law within the next 6 to 8 months.
See, I got one objection to the whole martial law thing, and that is I don't think they want to, wind up rounding us up because they're going to have to feed us and all that kind of good stuff. You know what I mean? I think they'd much rather turn off the lights and let us kill each other. You know?
I think that's what's going to end up happening, and they'll take everybody that takes to the streets when they find out that their dollar isn't worth everything, and they'll send down their hit squad of goons dressed up in their armored tanks and military regalia. And they'll come down and open fire on people.
Yeah. Well, getting back to what it is you're looking into, though, I often say this, and it's, it's obvious at this point that we're dealing with, sort of a neo-fascist state where we're, really the influence of what goes on in public life at this point is a whole lot more carried by the corporation as opposed to the individual. And we all know that money drives, the political stages as they were. But, I mean, I don't think people quite understand exactly how useless it is to be one individual standing on the mountain screaming at this point. Because we don't have that kind of push. We don't have the lobbyists. We don't have the corporate entities and the super PACs behind us. And no matter how much money we try to give, even with the limitations of, $28,000 for this and, $5,000 can only go to this and that, it doesn't really matter because, they supersede all that nonsense by turning around and, twisting the rules around and, being able to use these corporate entities as sort of surrogates. Mm-hmm. So, that is something, and that is one of those things I have never been willing to try and untangle because it's just an obvious, ball of twine. And, much like Alexander the Great when confronted with the Gordian knot, I'd rather slice it in half with a sword than try and untie it. But, But, I congratulate you for even trying because it's an immense task. I mean,
no, it is. It's quite daunting. My first day of research, I got into it, and I was like, yeah, this would be great for a series, and it'd go over great information that people need to know. I went this is just the first senator, and it took me, 4 hours to even start to locate these things. You have to ask the right questions, or else the internet's not going to give you any answers. At least nothing that, is of any substance.
Well, that is the problem because, it's all so convoluted at this point that, even though it says that, company A contributed so much money, toward this particular cause or whatever else, when they bundle those things together and then those causes, say contribute to the national committee, then that stuff is back funneled down again, locally, and you're running in circles trying to figure out where the money started and where it ended up. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's the way all this funding runs. I mean, it's amazing to me that any of the checks get cashed at this point because, I mean, God knows where it starts out. God knows where it ends up. And I mean, again, I applaud you for even trying to unravel it. It's...
Well, there's a very small group of people in control of, a lot of things. And I'm not talking about the 545 criminals yet. We'll get to them because they're being controlled. And that's what the purpose of the entire investigation is to really figure out who the controllers are. And it boils down to a very small group of people, really, that the more and more I'm digging, the more and more I'm finding the common denominators.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about even these large corporations when people say, well, here's corporation A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Well, here's your problem. Most of the, board members of those companies have common links to them anyway. And, are actually, controlled by, sub-companies that are actually the LLC of another guy or a family group or whatever else. And, when you start to really pare it down, the immense number of controllers really isn't there. It's an illusion. Mm-hmm.
And when you look into these businesses that are funded, you've got to look not only at the business, but is this a subsidized business or a subsidiary corporation of another larger corporation? That's how they hide themselves. Is they'll create these they've got the big conglomerates, of course, and then the big conglomerate creates these little cells that's what I like to call them. They're just little cell corporations to where they can transfer funds, from here to there and act as this corporation or as this little cell without getting the big conglomerate's name dirty. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I mean, I know it's a little silly to think about it, but you and I are both old enough to remember the days when Ross Perot was on TV, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. Do you recall when this guy was talking about how when we were taking down our borders and we were basically unleashing, taking away the restrictions on the corporations and removing the restrictions for international trade and stuff like this? I mean, didn't he pretty much predict the situation that we're currently in? Mm-hmm. I mean, isn't that kind of ironic? Is that the kooky little guy with his charts and his, well, I'm going to tell you how it works. This is the way it goes, and then there's going to be a giant sucking sound. Everything else is going to happen this way, and then you're going to see that the people in Mexico are going to get paid the same way the people in America are going to get paid because there ain't going to be no livable wage. Guess what? Here we are. You're 40 years old, and you got to try and get a job at McDonald's to beg for $8 an hour. This is where we're at. And wow, lo and behold, I mean, the guy wasn't Nostradamus. He just understood the numbers the way they were going. And, anybody...
Him and Ron Paul both.
Oh, yeah, well, I was getting to Ron Paul, but I wanted to pull a little further back because, I mean, people engaged in the kind of thing that we do often bring up Ron Paul, but I don't hear anybody mentioning Ross Perot anymore. He was that supposed third-party candidate, during the time when Clinton and Bush were running. And people forget about this guy, but I'm telling you, I guarantee you, if you go to YouTube or you Google him, you can still find, video clips of this guy. And yeah, he looked silly and he had big old ears and he talked real fast, pretty much like I just mocked him doing. But I'm telling you right now, I'm not that far off. I mean, I'm not an impersonator or anything, but Lee, I'm not that far off, right?
No, you're absolutely, you're pretty dead on. The way he talked it was humorous, but he had substance to say. As he was the third-party candidate who, he's pretty much a self-made millionaire, and he had his own money to fund himself. That was the last time that a third-party candidate was even allowed in the national debates.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to my memory, I don't think a third-party candidate has been allowed since. I mean, there was that whole controversy about the Green Party candidate in, 2000? I think it was the 2000 election, right? It was Ralph Nader was the Green Party candidate, but he wasn't allowed to be in there. And then there was a whole, convoluted way about how that was probably just a strategic thing, by the more left-wing concerns and all that. But meanwhile, you're getting to the real root of this by actually going after where's the money actually coming from. Because I don't think people understand exactly how much money it costs to even run these stupid, puppet shows, I mean, I'm sitting in the state of North Carolina where, Clay Aiken was running recently. And, if there was anything in the world to tell you exactly how bad the puppet show is, then imagine that he's one of the puppets now. Okay?
I don't even know what to say to that, man. Clay Aiken?
I kid you not, man.
This guy wasn't even good enough to win the show.
Right. He wasn't even good enough to win the fake singing contest that, people supposedly spend their money to call up and vote in on. But meanwhile, he's good enough to be selected to be one of these meat puppets, and I always call them meat puppets, that happen to be around because well, you know what? I'm probably giving them too much credit because I'm assuming they're made of meat. But, but the fact is that, these guys who do this stuff, they're no better than Clay Aiken. He's actually a prime example of what we're dealing with here. And they're being propped up by these individuals who really are pulling the strings on a whole bunch of different stables of horses that are being hooked to the same wagon, brother. And that is the actual lesson that I know you're going to develop out of this stuff, because even when you look at the supposed competition between different entities, you find that they're cross-contaminated, between the people that are actually making the profits are usually the same people, and it's not the CEOs. The CEOs are out in front, again, to be the spokespeople, but the actual money men are all the same guys. I mean, it's pretty much like the banks.
You're right. The board members are intermingled in between all sorts of different corporations, and sometimes competing ones.
Right. I mean,
and all of a sudden you've got people sitting on the board of one corporation who's actually in competition with this other corporation, but they've got the same people on the board.
Yeah, and I never wanted to believe this until I think it was, I don't know, I think it was the late 80s or the mid-90s, somewhere in there, where they did a study about Pepsi and Coke. Do you remember that? Where
I'm trying to think. The mid-90s were quite fuzzy for me.
Yeah, well, me too, because I was a musician, and like I said in one of the little promo things that I did, if you and I had the right supply of beer, I'm sure we could figure out a way to overthrow a small island nation, brother.
Oh yeah.
But,
oh yeah, I like that post. That's probably pretty true. You give us the right amount of beer, we'll figure it out.
You got it. But the thing is, I recall this, and I'm sure if you Bing search it or whatever it is you want to use, because I don't even suggest Google anymore because it's a nightmare. But look, if you look at a lot of competing corporations, pick yourself two of them where they actually, are should be at odds with one another. You'll often find that they have the same board members or related board members where people are in the same family. And generally these family interests work together because, it all coalesces into the same types of bank accounts. It builds the trust accounts for the next generation of, God knows what sometimes when it comes to these guys. But, and you notice that people's names continuously repeat. I mean, another interesting lesson that I just, picked up, like just something that flew by me this week is, Jimmy Carter's grandson is running for governor now in Georgia.
Oh, dear Lord.
It's just the point of, and if you think that, if we survive long enough, if you think we're not going to see a Chelsea Clinton run, you're out of your mind.
Oh yeah, definitely. She's been groomed for it since birth.
You got it.
They want to keep they want to keep their bloodlines in power. This is their plan. It has been for quite some time. Why do you think the Bushes we're talking about Jeb Bush running? We're actually seriously considering having another Bush be president. There are people in this country that are seriously considering that. Or even worse, Hillary Clinton.
You know what? I flip a coin, brother. I'm not sure which is worse. I almost think it doesn't matter if that's the two tickets,
Really? We shouldn't. By all means, I announced that I will be president before I would vote for them.
Yeah, well, I recently registered to vote again. I don't know why I did it. I just was sort of, compelled because I was going to try and get my ID, which is a whole other big fun event for me. But I'm going to get my ID, and they gave me the opportunity to register to vote. And they first asked me the two political parties, which one would you like to register as? And I said I can't under any good conscience register under either one of those two. I said I'd like to see who's on the ballot though, so I'll take the mailers. But
when the last time I registered was 2012, and I registered Libertarian.
Well, I was just getting there. That was what I finally ended up picking. But they didn't even give me that as an option because, they were actually doing it with me verbally because my eyesight's so bad. So they were checking off boxes for me on the form. But she was hesitating to give me unaffiliated or libertarian as options. So I found that kind of funny to begin with. But she was kind of stunned that I absolutely refused to, to choose the elephant or the jackass.
I don't see how people can get stunned anymore. Why? Man, they just don't open their eyes enough to see it. And I run across this every day on social media sites and everything else. There's always somebody saying, this such and such Republican is a racist or blah, 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 or this Democrat is such and such a racist and an idiot and evil and then all this other stuff. It's like, they're the same. Why? You're affiliating yourselves with two criminal organizations, either one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. And I point this out all the time because I'm constantly faced with the whole, anti-Obama thing. And, and I agree with them. I don't disagree with them. But here's your problem. They think the problems in this country began when this guy got elected. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You really think that's where it started? I said, and then they say, well, where do you think it started? And I'm like, well, to the best of my knowledge, since I'm 42 years old, I would say it started 42 years ago. But that's just my firsthand experience. I mean, it may be longer, but it just seems to me as though we've been in a decline since I've been alive. Now, it could be longer, but it definitely ain't shorter. So
it definitely is longer. History has shown that. You know, if you look back, history is the greatest teacher. Okay, and we constantly refuse to look through history. I mean, and if we did, I swear, if people actually did look through history and paid attention to it, they would be able to walk out their door and go, "Oh crap, it's happening again."
See, that's why I spend a lot of time on my shows, and I get a lot of crap, but I'll tell you what, I don't care. Here's the deal. Why do I spend time on the RFK assassination? I brought a witness on to discuss it and to discuss the context of it. Because to me, that and the JFK assassination, along with a whole lot of other crap that went on during that time, including the expansion of the intelligence agencies, you know, contributed to the crime, and I'm going to call it a crime, I don't care, that was the Vietnam conflict. Okay? And look, if you want to say that warfare has nothing to do with it, well, you know what? How many guys got returned here damaged from that? How many guys didn't get returned here? And then, you know what? Just because I'm a human being and I have sympathy for other human beings, you know, we can't even accurately count the amount of dead Vietnamese. So just taking those two situations and the context of what went on there and the fact that, you know, the last time that we had any sort of say in our government was probably half a century ago, probably, and I'm guessing, you know, that may have been an illusion as well. But the thing is,
it was well over a century.
Well, but it seems to me as though there was a chance, okay, because there was actions that were happening. There were things that it seemed as though the people that were being elected were still able to affect. The agencies were fighting back against them. They were becoming monsters, that's for sure. But at this point in time, there is no argument, as far as I'm concerned, as to what it's become. So I assume that we lost the last little, you know, that last couple of fingers hanging on the edge of the cliff here. This is what happened, as far as I'm concerned, 50 years ago. Now, that's my opinion, and you might disagree with that, but since I'm showing people the history, I'm trying to get them to understand that things changed based on certain things. You know, you have a Nixon presidency that came out of that. The fact that we were completely and finally removed from the gold standard changed the financial landscape as far as the money system from that point on, and that is at the time I was born, because I'm pretty sure it happened in 1971. The deal is that changed things. You know what I mean? And anybody who had any sort of power, as far as I'm concerned, again, the last guy who challenged the CIA was Nixon, and he got removed by a bunch of black bag guys who came from the CIA, who basically had to get rid of him differently because they couldn't put another bullet in the president's head, because we had already gone through all that crap and we're still arguing about it. So they couldn't do that again publicly, because that would have been too obvious. They had to just assassinate his character and give us a guy like Ford who was bought and paid for. So in order to do all that, you know, but from that point on, from the Ford presidency on, there was no power being exerted by any president that, you know, they weren't doing something just for show at this point, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I'm being naive even about it having had a chance to blossom into something where we would have had a say prior to that. But I can definitely see where we lost it there.
Yeah, well, after the Organic Act of 1871, the people's voice in our federal government effectively was silenced. I mean, it was silenced, and they were told that they were a corporation. You know, as these new senators and congressmen and presidents even that started coming through the system, they're already made knowledgeable that this is in fact a corporation now. It is not a government. Our main purpose is to make money.
Well, right, but simply by what is the word I am looking for here? You know, incrementally though.
Incrementally they've taken us to this point. But from 1871 on, when they realized that the American people and the American populace, you know, the everyday Joe and Schmo would not sit there and go, "Oh, well, now you're a corporation and we all work for you? Oh, we don't have any rights as far as you're concerned? Oh." You know, they knew that we wouldn't take that. So they had to keep the veil of enchantment upon us. Oh, yeah, you're still free. And we're going to say, we'll talk about the Constitution, and then, you know, we'll say this coincides with the Constitution and it's for the people. And then meanwhile, while we're not talking to you, especially back then when there was no mass communication such as C-SPAN or anything like that, you know, they're passing unconstitutional statutes and acts behind the scenes and convoluting it with such legalese crap that nobody even wants to look into it. People are like, as long as, there's food on the table and a roof over our head, then we don't care. And look at what our apathy has gotten us.
Right, but the realization here that people fail to understand is that slavery wasn't abolished; it was expanded. The size of the plantation actually grew, and I can't remember if it was Huxley or if it was another author who said it, but isn't it so much more convenient when you make the slave love their slavery or love their servitude? This is what basically happened. And at first, it was a financial thing, and there was still an ability to feed your family, and you still had, the possibilities. But then again, they didn't have a strong control grid at that point. They had the financial control, and they were able to bring about, a couple of different mechanisms, and they perfected it in 1913, as far as I'm concerned, with the Federal Reserve. But they brought a few different financial mechanisms into place so that they could sort of keep the population in check. Because at that time there was no way that they were going to be able to, to have a mechanized slaughter of us all. They didn't quite have the medical pharmaceutical technology to make us all as sick as they do now. I mean, all they could do then is give us blankets with smallpox on it, and they already tried that, with others, and it didn't quite work out the way they wanted it to. So, the fact is that they had to go about this another way. So this is why the incremental, turning up the water on the boiling frog very, very slowly so he don't jump out of the pot happened.
That's right.
And that's the ball game. Like
it
I
really
said,
is. And to them, it is a giant game. It's a game of chess, and they play it like Bobby Fischer, man. I'm telling you what, they know what they're doing. They've been working on this for years and decades, and this system that we have now, this police state, this culmination of this pseudo-fascist, hybrid, socialist, progressive, God only knows. I can't even come up with a good name for it. It's so disgusting that it's a reality that we're living in, and we've reached the boiling point. It's either we get out of the water now or we cook.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels that way, and nothing is improving. Like I said, look, just in our lifetimes, if we just assume that everything in history is a lie, we'll just toss it all aside, and we just take a look at our own point of view, our own perspectives. I mean, think about it. What has actually improved in this country since the time that you and I were kids?
Nothing.
Can you think of anything? I mean, people
as a matter of fact, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, but people say, the technology's gotten better and things have gotten...
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why it's gotten worse, is because the technology has gotten better. I saw a post today when I was looking on Facebook. Somebody said, you're a 10-year-old kid, and you have an iPhone, an iPad, a tablet, a computer, and all this other stuff. When I was 10 years old, I had one thing to play with. It was called outside.
Yeah, well, they have all those wonderful things, but a bright future is not one of the things that they have. And that's
the horrifying thing about it for me. As a father of four, when I'm doing my research or reading the news or what have you, that's the thing that sends the chill up my spine. It's that, man, I've got kids. What am I leaving? What are we leaving these kids?
Yeah,
nothing.
Exactly.
We're leaving them a prison.
Exactly, and it's not all by our design, but we need to do something about it because we're actually aware of it. I mean, I'm not sure if the previous generations were actually aware at all. Occasionally you had people that spoke up, and and they were just dismissed as the crazies. But the more of us that are starting to examine the realities around us, we're starting to see that this is not the insanity that they told us it was. I say all the time, I really want to apologize to those guys that used to be screaming about the CIA beaming things into their heads on the streets, because you know what? They were probably right. And, and as far as, all these other things that were supposed to be paranoid and ridiculous and, part of these vast nebulous conspiracies that couldn't possibly exist because they involved too many players. It's impossible. Well, here's the problem. it's actually, if you look at it logically at this point, it's impossible that it's not being done by design. It's impossible that it's not something that's real at this point. And, now I feel really, really bad for ever having dismissed all that stuff,
Yeah. And, there was a point in time that I did as well, me and my father would get into vast political discussions, and we have almost all my life, and like I said, we'd listen to talk radio, and those are the guys that influenced me, your Paul Harveys, your Ronald Reagans, your Rush Limbaugh's even, all the way up, and we'd sit and talk and have these long discussions, and it became quite obvious once I fully woke up at just to how dumbed down my parents' generations was. And these are the generations of the hippies of the 60s and everything else, man. The people that we almost thought were the most awake are really weren't.
Right. It was almost like they were being just herded into a different cattle car. That's all it was. It had prettier colors, but outside of that, they weren't understanding that, that these things were still not being addressed. I mean, as much as they wanted to do something, it's almost like their energies were being channeled into the wrong places on purpose again, because, after all, if they're nothing else, they are masters of distraction. You got to give them credit.
That's for sure.
And they have absolutely utilized every weapon of mass distraction possible to keep everyone at bay and to keep everybody busy, including us fighting with each other. And, it's really important to me that you bring up, the idea that you're worried about the next generation, because this is what terrifies the hell out of me and forces me to have to do what I do. Mm-hmm. Because, I have two now. I got one more coming, and I'll tell you the truth. I'm most frightened for the one coming.
Yeah, I've got 4 and then twin grandbabies coming.
Oh, man.
So, there's a reason I'm on the air 6-7 days a week. There's a reason I'm sitting back in my office each and every day, face glued into research, because something's got to be done. I can't in good conscience leave this world the way it is to my kids or my grandkids. I refuse to.
That's it. And you know what? I figure to myself that even if I reach one person, and I know sometimes, our audiences are larger and sometimes they're smaller, it doesn't really matter, because if I reach just the right person and get them aware and hopefully get them to innovate changes, there's no telling how far that ripple effect will go. And I say it all the time, and I'll tell you, I get criticized for that sometimes because I'm too optimistic, I'm told. Because all of this is just going to come apart. That's the end of it. And just face reality. Because some people that are awake are completely, they've given in to the idea that they've already won. That the other side has already won. That humanity is basically beaten. And I refuse to accept that. Because, I got personal reasons for it, Lee. I got to be honest with you. The day I was born, my father was told not to even give me a name because I was not supposed to survive 24 hours. Okay? So, I have it ingrained in me to refuse to understand that you just lay down and die. I don't know where it came from, but it's something I have. You know what I mean? And I know that it's in the guts of most people, because you know what? If you're really pressed up against the wall and you really know that you're confronted, with something truly evil, truly harmful, and truly destructive to yourself or your family, you get your back up against that wall, regardless of how peaceful you are, regardless of how complacent you might be, you will fight. And it doesn't matter what the odds are. And I think, the difference between, some of us who are deciding to try and do something, anything, to speak out, to move things forward, to influence others, to try and create a bigger collection of us, okay, is that all of us feel as though our backs are up against the wall. And I think some people don't feel that way. I think that they feel like, there's no wall. They've just been pushed. And maybe they don't fully comprehend the nefarious nature of what's confronting them. I'm not sure, because I can't get into that mindset anymore. Sometimes I'm sad that my eyes got opened here, you know?
Yeah.
Because it was a hell of a...
It's a burden.
It was a hell of a...
It's a burden, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, go ahead.
I mean, to walk around in society, and over the winter, you know, my day work gets slowed down quite a bit, and so I took a second job this last winter, and it was in, you know, just a little pizza place selling pizza to people, and it was the hardest thing I ever had to do was not the job, but looking at the people. And not being able to say, you know, that's poison. You know, you probably shouldn't be eating this stuff or feeding it to your family or anything else. I had to quit because it ate me up inside that what I was doing was just being part of the machine. And I don't like being part of the machine. What I do for a day job is, you know, I paint apartments. You know, people move in and out of apartments, I go and paint them. That's to me, you know, a useful thing. You know, that's helping people when they're moving into a new place. It's nice to have a nice coat of paint, and the place looks nice. You know, so I'm part of a machine that way. But the other machine that I was a part of this past winter, and just watching these zombies come in with they've got their earpiece in their ear, or they're sitting there looking on their phone, or everything else, and it's like you have no idea what's going on, do you? I was like, do you know that when you go home and turn on your water tap and take a drink out of it, you're being poisoned? I just wanted to scream it out to people. I was like, do you know that each and every day your federal government is closer to taking this dollar that you're trying to hand me for this garbage, and it's making it worth less? All of a sudden, and I used to get all that, and we worked at a cheap pizza. It was a Little Caesars, you know, $5 friggin' pizzas, man.
Oof.
You know, $5 GMO pizzas, and we'd have and it was in one of the richer parts of town, and we'd have these people pull up in BMWs, Lexuses, got their old suit on and everything else, and they're coming in and buying $5 pizzas.
Right.
It drove me nuts. It's like, you know, that Lexus and everything, all that money in your pocket, and you walking around with your $300 sunglasses on and your $200 shoes and your white watch, which clearly denotes that you're a douchebag. Yep. All that's going to be worth nothing if you don't stand up and say something about it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, the last, because I've been having trouble getting some work lately, but the last steady job that I was holding was at a convenience store. You want to talk about watching people shuffle in and out and being clueless about what it is they were purchasing, what it is they were doing, and being so clueless that, I mean, there was even occasions where people would literally rob other people online, you know, and then we'd have to straighten it out later with the local police to figure out how somebody picked somebody else's pocket while somebody was staring at a phone or whatever else. I mean, weird stuff like that. And then meanwhile, they're clamoring to buy. I mean, I don't even want to describe half of the crap I had to sell, you know, but if you think a $5 pizza is bad, you know, think about what happens when you got, you know, 2 for $1 hot dogs and, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and stuff like that, and other things that, you know, are supposed to be dairy products that don't require refrigeration whatsoever, and, you know, things like this that you're selling to people.
That's creepy.
It's creepy stuff because, you know, it just, without being, you know, scientific or technical about it at all, it starts to make you wonder if it's supposed to be like dairy and it doesn't behave like dairy, it doesn't go bad, what in the world is it? You know, and, then when you
it's like the butter stuff that people just love to have. They'd ask us to put it on their crust. They'd ask us to put it on, you know, double it up on my breadsticks there for me and everything else. It was one ingredient away from being plastic.
Right, a whole lot like the Subway thing that happened recently. Did you see the recent Subway commercials, by the way?
No, I don't watch television.
Well, you know what? But I keep getting them because every time I click on a video online, I got to watch commercials to get to my videos. You know?
Yeah.
So
I know what you're talking about. But you know what's really sucks is as I woke up a couple of years ago, and right before I did, I went out and spent an ungodly amount of money on this internet-ready television, high def, the whole 9 yards, big, 4.5-foot screen.
Right.
I haven't looked at it in 6 months.
Well,
it sits out in my living room. My kids, watch it. I don't hook up cable television or anything. They watch Netflix, but they've watched that television more than I have.
Yeah, but that's the way that kind of thing goes, man. I mean, I got a TV I don't turn on also, but the Subway thing cracked me up because did you hear about what they had in their bread for a little while there?
Huh.
The same stuff that the same exact ingredient pretty much that they use in yoga mats, right? So people protested about it. They decided, okay, we're going to remove it, but they didn't remove it right away because they had to, get rid of their inventory, right? So now the new Subway commercial says something like, well, we took some things out of our bread and we added some new things into it, so it's much better now. And I just found that, like, hysterical, It's like, look, we took away some of the plastic. We added some other stuff. We're not going to tell you what it is, but it's good now. Even though you're supposed to be eating fresh before. Eating fresh what? Yoga mats? I mean, it's like the world gone mad thing. I don't understand it, the whole, the drug concept kills me too. You know what I mean? The whole idea that, if you're a localized dealer or you're a localized user and you're in possession of, a couple of bags of dope or whatever, or even a bag of marijuana in the wrong state at this point, you're going to jail. But if you're one of these guys who, grows it, processes it, and imports it, you might actually be entitled to military protection. You know what I mean? Where does this whole, it's like the organized mafia that they used to talk about that they wanted to challenge and was so evil and so nefarious. The only reason why they were so evil and nefarious is because they weren't paying the taxes to the right people and they weren't on a high enough level to get away with things. That was the only thing. They might actually serve some jail time once in a while. These other people don't. They wind up with, medals and public office. Mm-hmm. It's just so backwards. I don't even know how to explain it. And then when
it's like Bizarro World. If you ever know anything about the Superman comics, Bizarro Superman.
Yeah.
Like everything was backwards on the Bizarro planet as it was on this planet. We've moved. The Bizarro World is now here. Everything that is right is now wrong. Everything that is left is now right. Everything that is up is now down.
Yeah, I mean the whole black is white and white is black, and we've definitely gone through the looking glass. I think we were already through there. It's just that guys like you and me only realized it a few years ago. This is what the problem was, But we sleptwalked through the looking glass, and it's amazing to still, like you said, watch these people that are still sleepwalking, not understanding, thinking they're doing a good thing by bringing home all that GMO crap to their kids, and just feeding them poison. I mean, aspartame alone is something that I bring up all the time. I know everybody's sick of hearing me talk about it. But, I mean, it is one of the most insidious poisons ever. And all they do now is rename it. It's in everything. Every processed food pretty much that you see anywhere, contains some type of aspartame. It's like, it's okay to poison as long as you take this, the officially sanctioned poisons. That's fine. But if you decide you want to get high, you better make sure that you got a prescription from the medical establishment, because that's okay if you drug yourself into into non-existence that way. You know what I mean?
That's the horrible double standard that we live in now. They don't want you to use your drugs. They want you to use their drugs. Because see, with their drugs, they can manipulate and add to it whatever they want to get into you. Oh, such as like, thimerosal. Take a look at vaccines. This is mercury. They're putting mercury into you. I posted something today. It's been going crazy in this group I'm in. Vaccines, the horrible truth is the group, but the CDC actually had to release that they knew that mercury is poisonous and shouldn't be going into people's bodies.
Yeah.
They've been hiding this from the public for years.
I got to tell you, I picked up that post and I put it on the Ochelli Effect page, and it is exactly the same thing that we were talking about. I think it was not this past week, but the week before. I had Roger Landry on, and he was explaining and I never knew this. I think it might be in that article as well, though. The idea that, you know, the amount of thimerosal which was being introduced via the flu shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into, like, say, a pregnant woman. Okay, it might be about 30 times. I'm loosely quoting these mathematical equations, but I'm telling you, I'm not far off. It's like 30 times what the CDC or the EPA says is toxic to an organism about that average size. But when you consider that it's being introduced into a fetus who has a shared bloodstream with that woman, okay, and doesn't have the blood-brain barrier in place, doesn't even have all of its, synaptic nerve endings finalized, basically. Not until you're about 18 to 24 months of age is that even done, you know, outside of the womb. But still in the womb, the amount of this mercury that's being introduced to the fetus, and again, I'm thinking about this a lot because, you know, they want to try and push this stuff on my unborn child right now. The thing is, the amount that's being introduced into that fetus as compared to what the EPA says is toxic is 2,500 times the acceptable level. Now,
that's right.
The acceptable level, first of all, the acceptable level of something that is clearly and unequivocally a poison is already a problem. But
yeah.
But let's just assume that you can tolerate some of the poison, okay? Let's just assume that if you eat some of the lead chips, you know, lead paint chips, it's all right. You know, let's just assume that, you know, so what? You need Velcro to tie your shoes from now on. It's okay. No problem. But, if you assume that you're introducing 2,500 times the amount knowingly based on statistical stuff from your own government, how do you describe that as anything other than criminal, evil, disregarding any sort of humanity whatsoever? I mean, I know I'm sure you agree with me here, but I mean, do you have another description for that?
Shitty.
Okay, I'll go with that too. It's probably shitty.
That's my down to earth type of it's a shitty thing to do. Really, it is. I mean, look at countries, and I keep telling people this I've been telling people this for years and years and years. My cousin, his son is autistic.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no doubt, and we've done the medical research and everything else, there's no doubt that this was caused by thimerosal in vaccines. Okay? In countries where they do not vaccinate kids, they don't even know what autism is.
Right.
Think about that.
And you don't have to go even to another country. All you got to do is look, there's a couple of arguments here, and I'm going to acknowledge one of them. And that is that they changed the standards by which they diagnose, you know, autism and the spectrum and all that. But at the same time, they needed to accommodate the fact that there are all these dysfunctional problems now with kids. I mean, not only do we have a society that, that doesn't allow you to control your children properly, otherwise you might be punished, you might be censored, you might have your children taken away from you. Okay, if you do something that's not part of the the lexicon of acceptable things so far as the local government is concerned. But in addition, you have absolute proof for the poisoning of fetuses, of small children, via these vaccines, via the genetically modified crap that they put in baby formula and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and meanwhile, how do these kids even have a chance? You know?
They don't. We didn't. We didn't have a chance when we were born either, because they've duped the public into believing that, everything we're doing for you is good. Don't worry about it. Just because we say so, it's good.
And we were only born.
Obviously don't look into it, and none of us did. You know, we got born into this slavery without even having a contract, without not anything signed. I know I didn't sign anything to give these people this power.
Exactly, neither did I. And I know that, at our age, that what we were introduced to as babies was like the MMR stuff, but that is like child's play compared to this nonsense now. They want to give them hepatitis B, and they want to give them, something like 9 times the amounts of shots are what they're trying to push on these children now as compared to what it was when we were kids. You know,
and when they first started doing this around about the time that you were born, actually in the early 70s, these diseases that they supposedly need to vaccinate us for, so they don't cause an epidemic, were already on a steep decline because we figured out how to do a couple things. We figured out how to wash on a regular basis, how to keep clean, how to not live in filth and squalor. We learned how to take care of ourselves better. So these diseases were already on a decline and on their way to a self-eradication as it was. Then the federal government decided, hey, you know what, we're going to tell you guys that we don't want these diseases to come back, and they just might. So we're going to stick everybody that's born with a needle full of crap to make sure that this disease doesn't come back.
Oh, right. And even looking at, forgetting about the regular type vaccines, just looking at flu shots, the way that they're constructed, and, I'm not even going to get into the, all of the contents of them, but even when they decide which strains of flu to put in there, they're deciding based on, some really weird standards where they're, putting in, stuff that was, halfway around the world that affected, a couple hundred people here or there. And the fact that these organisms are even being introduced on the other side of the globe makes no sense whatsoever unless you're actually trying to spread the disease instead of the, supposed preventative measure. And that's the only sense I can make.
They want to control the disease, and in controlling a disease, then you have the ability to cull a population. See, that's why I've had people chastise me, unfriend me, yell at me up one side and down the other because I denounced the CDC. I'm like, it needs to be completely abolished. That way people are going to get sick all the time. And no, they won't. See, there's a reason they call it the Center for Disease Control. If they were really concerned about getting rid of diseases, it would be called the Center for Disease Eradication.
Well, right, and now they've tried to soften that blow a little bit by putting some of that stuff under the banner of the National Institute of Health. Yeah, have you noticed that as well? Some of those sort of control mechanisms that were all previously under the CDC. I mean, where they did some work which was of interest and may have actually been of value, but it was mixed in with all this other crap. They sort of started to see that, people understood that the word disease was a little disturbing in the title. So now the NIH is in there instead of the CDC in a lot of cases. But it's still the same organization. It's still the same mechanisms. It's still the same backtracking and going back over things, post-mortem in most cases, to discover exactly the amount of damage done. And I don't know about you, but that sounds a whole lot more like what a military organization does after they introduce a biological weapon, is to try and, sort of take stock of exactly how much damage was done by said weapon. Maybe I'm crazy, but I mean, if you just take a look at, say the AIDS crisis, and the way that they went back and backtracked it, when they originally were calling it GRID and all that, and how they traced it back to patient zero, et cetera, and we all know that story. But the thing is, if you take a look at the way that they sort of took a look at that post-mortem or post-incident, let's just say, it seems a whole lot more like a military organization evaluating its use of weapons, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what they do. That's why I said it was the Center for Disease Control. It was named that way for a reason. They don't want to get rid of these diseases. They want to control and manipulate them and use them as a weapon at their will when they need to. And there's, it's really kind of creepy to me here in Iowa, up in Ames. Now, is one of the biggest biological weapons collections that we have in the country.
Oh, wait a minute.
They have these diseases and everything up there, students up there to study. A friend of mine's daughter actually goes up to study these things. Luckily, this friend is quite wide awake and quite well-spoken. He's a reverend, and he knows what's going on. He listens to my shows all the time, and we've talked for years and years and years, been good friends for a very long time. And she knows. So she knows what she's going to do. She's going to study and trying to find ways to actually help people. You know, but she also knows the difference between what government manipulation is and everything else. So we have children, we have beings that are getting involved in this to do the right thing, but we have to make sure that they're informed on what the wrong thing really is.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is the fear there is that, somebody like your friend's daughter would be co-opted, into believing that she's doing the right thing when she's not. And, but I'm very glad you brought it up, because you know what? A lot of people talk about the whole Plum Island thing and moving it to Kansas and all that, not realizing that, there are actually these disease research laboratories all over the country. And, we all know, Fort Detrick. We all heard about the Plum Island thing. I mean, so on and so on. We all know about the, place in, San Francisco and Austin and all that. But there are literally these, smaller ones all over the place. And believe me, a virus is no less deadly in Iowa than it would be in New York. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think people miss that a lot of times.
Well, they do. They're looking at it's like people have blinders on. You know how the horses do when they race?
Yep.
They have the blinders on, and they're looking just straight ahead, and all they see is the propaganda that's being fed to them. Then that's all they believe. We have to take the blinders off of people so you can look around and see. Oh, this is the real big picture. The real big picture is screwed up, man. We are throwing our futures away. We're throwing our children's futures away and giving it to a small group of oligarchs who just want to control us, period. And I just read something about the Pope publicly came out today and endorsed RFID tagging. Or cattle. They brand cattle so then they know where they are.
RFID tagging. I was not aware of that one. I didn't see that story. Man.
Yeah, I just saw it come across my news feed a little bit ago.
Wow.
I was like, really?
And that's been a strange thing too over there, is, a lot of people have been, sort of touting this new Pope, Francis, as having, been, sort of evolutionary in his thinking and, having been progressive, in a positive sense, not that false progressive, narrative that we're so used to, but having been, less constricted by what they call, the medieval construct of the Catholic Church and all that. And, and I, as soon as I see that, my red flags start to go up, because, when you start to see sort of liberals endorsing the antithesis of themselves, you wonder what the backroom deal is there. You know what I mean? And, that is really fascinating and, really strange. Really strange. I mean, what good would it do if you're the holy, apostle on earth and, the guy who has God's ear? Why would you endorse basically, putting a tag on human beings?
Yeah. Why would anybody do that? It just in good conscience, unless they're down with the entire control. It's and that's where they're at. They want to control you, and if they know where you are, then they control you. If they know what you eat, then they control you. If they know how much money you're spending, then they control you. And here's the thing about RFID tagging, ladies and gentlemen, is this isn't a piece of electronical equipment that's being placed under your skin. Now, with the very real possibility of signals being beamed into your brain as it is already, this has already been proven. This has been proven numerous amounts of times that this technology is possible. Do you not think that inserting a little piece of electronical equipment could put you into a situation to where next thing you know, you're waking up standing there holding a gun in a movie theater full of people?
See, that's instructive, but, you and I are well aware of the fact that you don't even need these tags to do that crap at this point. I mean, all you do is target.
That's right, they don't, but wouldn't it just be so much easier?
You know what? It might actually simplify the process, yeah.
They could flip a switch, and they don't just have one gunman. Now all of a sudden they got a dozen, like that.
See, and it just gets scarier too. And you know, people say, well, you know, what are you worried about? If you have that, actually, that means you never have to lose your wallet or whatever. You know, I hear this kind of nonsense, and I try and explain to people that, you know, you're missing the point of, you know, now you become integrated into the electronic internet of everything. You know, and I find that statement really frightening to begin with. You know, Cisco famously runs international commercials discussing about how, you know, the whole world is going to be part of the internet of everything. And I know this isn't exactly what they mean by it, but, you know, it pulls into my mind, you know, the concept of the appliances that can keep track of the food that you have, that can speak to each other and broadcast along any open network out into the ether, like anywhere. You know, and all that requires then is for someone to collect that data, and then you don't have to tell anybody anything. You don't have to let anybody into your home. You don't have to allow a listening device in because they're already there. All you need is a refrigerator, you know, and a stove that happen to be talking to each other and explaining how much you're eating. You know, and then therefore your entire history can be sort of extrapolated from this stuff. Plus, they can determine the types of food and everything else you're bringing into your house. So maybe that makes you more at risk because, you know, you're a diabetic, so maybe you shouldn't be allowed to drive a car because you might be able to have, you know, stuff like this. It amazes me that nobody thinks of this stuff.
Really, and when you find out a lot of the stuff that we have found out through our due diligence and research, ladies and gentlemen, especially when it comes down to the food and the genetically modified food that is being force-fed to us on a mass scale. You know, it's so much so that they won't even tell us what's in it. You know, our criminal government is passing acts and statutes saying that, oh, they don't have to, like the Monsanto Protection Act and other things. But more and more people are waking up. You know, when Vermont, their governor, signed into law in their state saying, you know, GMOs have to be labeled in our state now. If that's what they're going to do, that's what it's going to be. And who strikes back at him and who says, all right, well, that's the case, because the law's not going to take effect until 2016. Giving them 2 years to change their product, change their manufacturing practices to include the GMO labeling on there. But the Grocers Administration, National Grocers Association, said that they were going to file a lawsuit. Now, if that doesn't tell you that there's something wrong here, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not about what you're eating, it's not about your health or anything else, it's not about you at all, it's about money, I don't know what will, ladies and gentlemen. They're right there. If that doesn't tell you, the National Grocers Association, these are the people who are, you know, pretty much overseeing what goes into your grocery store. And they want to file suit because we want our food labeled.
Yeah, and it leads exactly to what would be the harm of adding a little more ink to the box, you know, or what would be the harm of putting an additional, you know, couple of lines to explain what the hell is in it. Except that, what? It would actually frighten people and might actually draw them away from some of this stuff. I mean, I don't know. It just seems really strange that the people that are, you know, involved in the business of distribution, basically, would really care about what the manufacturers have to do by adding a couple of lines of text to their packaging, basically.
Exactly. And let me tell you, folks, I've worked in printing presses before. I know people who still work in printing presses. Let me tell you what, the cost does not increase for just adding a couple lines, not that much. I mean, if you're mass producing a box of cereal, and just to add a couple of lines, you know, it contains genetically modified organisms. That's it. That's all you got to do. You know, that's what, maybe 2 cents per box?
Not
price
even.
Increase?
Yeah, probably not even.
If that at all?
Probably not even, because all you got to do is drop out some of the, you know, some of the tone that has to go into that spot normally and say make it white, and then there you go. It probably actually nullifies itself.
Yeah.
You know, because I've done some printing work too, and I know that it's really, once you get, you know, beyond the initial setup and all that stuff, you know, making minor changes to these things on a massive scale like that are really negligible when it comes to cost or difficulty or whatever else, especially now.
And with, you know, with the CNC machinery that they use, it's all a matter of changing just a couple of lines of code in these machines. It takes maybe 5 minutes, and bam, that label can be on each and every box from then on, and nobody has to touch a thing except for reloading the cardboard or the paper or whatever you're printing it on.
Exactly. It's not even labor intensive, is what you're saying.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
so,
precisely.
Not only is it not costly, it's not labor intensive. You don't have to pay somebody an extra $20 for an hour's worth of work or anything like that. And that's all we're saying. We're not saying you don't have to tell us how you genetically modified it or anything else. Just tell us. Okay, if you want your process to be kept a secret and you don't want competitors to figure it out, which has been a lot of their complaint and everything else, fine. Then just write contains genetically modified organisms.
Yeah, proprietary patents and all that kind of nonsense aside, it doesn't matter. If it's just a generalized label that alerts people to the fact that this stuff is in there. I think the problem is that, just about everything on the market would have to be labeled this way. This is what the difficulty is. Because that's the frightening thing to me at this point is that, real honestly, and people say this to me all the time, well, if you don't want it, then you don't buy it. Well, here's your problem. I don't know what's been genetically modified at this point. Even when I go and I try and buy, fresh vegetables and stuff like this, or, God help me, I know people give me crap for it, but I still eat meat. Bottom line is I'm gonna. But I don't know what those animals have been fed. I don't know what's been pumped into them. And again, even with the vegetables, who the hell knows what they use to fertilize the soil with? Who the hell knows what it was actually sprayed with? Who knows what it was sprayed with in shipping? I mean, we've all seen the stories about them spraying down food with viruses to kill off other things like, they kill off a bacteria with a virus and things like this. It's almost incomprehensible that that nobody really truly knows what's in their food, and and also even when you do try and go organic and all that stuff, unless you grew it yourself, you don't really know the process. Yeah,
and therein lies. I think that the process should be made public knowledge. I mean, really, if it's not bad for us and everything's okay, everything's on the up and up, then by all means, tell us the process. I don't want to steal it. I really don't care. It's not like I'm just going to go out tomorrow and buy me a little, Mr. Wizard chemistry set and, start genetically modifying things. It's not going to happen. But I think that people deserve to have the knowledge of what they're being put into their body, how it's getting from point A to point B. You know what I mean? And I think we deserve to even know that what's being fed to the meat that we eat. And I'm like you, dude. I eat meat. I love eating meat. I'll eat it. Give it to us raw and wriggling. I love meat. I don't care. When I stick my fork in a steak, that thing better moo. But the way I see it, number one, I'm not going to stop eating meat or eating food. There are a lot of foods that I will not eat anymore. There are a lot of places I will not go anymore. But I have the knowledge at least. At least I know. Okay, I know that if I stop at this gas station, my stomach's rumbling, my gut, I feel nauseous because I haven't eaten anything. I'm getting dizzy because I think I'm a little bit hypoglycemic. I better eat something. The only place to stop is this gas station. It's gas station food, potato chips, or like you said, two for $1 hot dogs or something like that. But I know, okay? I'm making an informed decision, albeit probably not the best one, to stop at this gas station and throw some groceries down my neck because I'm hungry. But at least I know that, hey, I'm doing something bad. It's the same thing with cigarettes. I need to quit smoking cigarettes. I really do. But
yeah,
here I am with the cigarette in my hand, talking right now.
Yeah, you and me both. I just put one out, but but even so, but when you go into a grocery store, even and you want to cook it yourself, you want to deal with it yourself, and you're not buying the fast food, which is treated with God only knows what, and you're not going to KFC instead of the place that doesn't allow them to use the word chicken anymore and all that. Even if you go to try and buy yourself a piece of chicken at this point, and you look at the size of these friggin' chicken parts. Have you seen these chicken parts? I mean, just taking a look at them and trying to imagine the rest of the chicken. when you're looking at it, and tell me that doesn't like kind of frighten you a little bit, because that is not a natural chicken. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And they've come out now. You know, McDonald's and other places have come out and said, no, we're going to use lab-grown chickens.
Right. I mean,
they're not even bothering to lie about it anymore.
Right.
I show this to people, and I won't allow McDonald's in my house. I ask people. I've grabbed their food and thrown it out my door. I'm not even joking. I will not allow it.
I absolutely believe you, man. You know, I've only had a few conversations with you, but I totally picture you taking somebody's bag of McDonald's and tossing it right back out your front door.
Yep.
I believe that. You know,
and I've had people getting, even my daughter, especially who's pregnant and staying with me now. I told her, I was like, don't let me catch you eating that stuff again. I'm serious. You may be, 19, almost 20 years old and about to be a mom, but I will smack you like I'm your dad still, because I am your dad. Don't think that I won't. Ever catch you putting that garbage down your neck again? I was like, if you want to eat garbage, we produce some on a daily basis. I have a can for it right here. Grab a spoon and dig in. I've not seen McDonald's in my house since. So.
Well, good on you, man. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing. I mean, I don't have mine living with me at the moment. The little one, when he comes, will, but it's one of those things I've already talked about on the air. How I'm gonna make the baby food myself, but I'm still bothered because I don't have the capacity to grow my own stuff. So I'm gonna try and be as informed as possible when I'm picking up that produce and trying to make his baby food. But it is one of those things that even if we wanted to make that decision and you wanted to go to the KFC where they're growing the lab, that's one of those places that definitely is using those lab grown, chicken-like organisms.
Actually, I can tell you, KFC does not use lab grown chickens. They use farm raised chickens. My aunt has worked at KFC for 30 years. Okay, she's ran the same store for 30 years. My cousin works there. My brother works there. So I know quite a bit about what they do. My cousin is actually the person who woke me up. So as far as all that goes. So I know that if it was being GMO, if it was lab-grown chickens, number one, he would burn the building down and never go back again. So the fact that he is still working there,
well, okay.
They haven't done it. So I will stand up for KFC in that aspect. They do use the farm-raised chickens, even though farm-raised chickens are usually treated cruelly and horribly, and we've all seen that before. But I mean, it's food.
Well, what it is, I've been reading these articles about it where they said that they were using them. That's what I'm going on. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I still go back to, and I really don't touch it at this point, but I still go back to the chicken in the store, and it just doesn't seem realistic to me that that a chicken leg is supposed to be that size, or that a chicken breast is supposed to be that size. Because, again, if you just sort of put together the rest of the chicken, that damn thing is huge, But I'm just saying, I've seen these articles. I don't know. I mean, maybe I should go look at it some more. But I mean, I do know.
Well, maybe I should. You never. I haven't heard about KFC using them. I've definitely heard about McDonald's and Burger Queen and those other ones using them, and I have not heard about KFC, though. As far as I knew, they were still using the farm-raised chickens. I know the ones here in Iowa actually get it from Roseacre Farms out west of town here. I know that they deliver. I worked at KFC when I was a kid, too, so I remember the trucks coming to bring the chicken.
It could be that some places are and some places aren't. I mean, you never know. It's sometimes.
Well, they're franchised, so the franchisee, once you franchise these big fast food names, then it falls on you as to where you're importing it from. Some of them mandate that you import from a certain place or whatnot, like Blue Line or things like that. But some franchisees and franchises actually have the freedom to be able to stock their stuff as best they see fit, which will be more cost effective and better for them and what their product is going out in their several stores. So.
Yeah, well, I know like the McDonald's pretty much doesn't offer you too many options. I mean, you gotta get your stuff from, your assigned distributors. That
and that's Ronald McDonald, I swear. Ronald McDonald's the one growing all this stuff in the lab. It wasn't Willard Scott all those years ago. I know it. He's actually an immortal clown, a demon from hell.
I love that. That's great. There is something wrong with those characters anyway, man. There is something really strange about those McDonald's characters. I always found it really fascinating when they changed the hamburger around anyway. So remember when we were kids, the hamburger was a little more of a darker character. Now they made him kind of happy and weird. He's a little more, I hate to use this term, but he's a little more fruity nowadays than he used to be. I don't know what that's all about, but something's wrong with the hamburger. I'm not sure what it is. And Grimace always disturbed me anyway. I don't know why he made my skin crawl. Probably because I didn't understand what kind of creature he's supposed to be. But I digress. Either way.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell Grimace was. He looked like a gumdrop with arms and legs, and it
bothered me when I was a kid just because I couldn't understand what he was. Oh, well. Anyway, we're actually talking about the McDonald's characters. That's great.
Well, they were a part of our lives when we was kids. McDonald's was, Pops was one of those cheap hippies, Mm-hmm. So going to McDonald's when you got, and I was the oldest of 4 kids, so going to McDonald's when you got 4 kids and you're a cheap hippie was like a rarity. Maybe once every 6 months, Pops would take us to McDonald's. And I remember being a kid and looking so forward going, man, Pops going to take us to McDonald's today. We get to get Big Mac, we get to get this and this and that. And I realized just how much garbage I've thrown down my neck over my lifetime and how I looked forward to eating crap. And it boggles my mind that still and yet people will do this. We've all seen the pictures of the McDonald's sandwiches in the Smithsonian Institute.
Yeah, they didn't go bad and all that other stuff.
Yeah, they don't go bad. They don't. You can leave that stuff just sitting out for God and everyone to see for decades, and it will look the same. If that doesn't tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, then you have your head firmly planted up your ass.
You know what was also really strange and kind of informative is when I started working with some people, because like I said before, I was a musician, but I also worked with people that were in television and radio and stuff like that. But working with a couple of guys that I knew in commercials, they used to laugh at me when I would say that something looked good on TV, because now it's done differently. But back in the 80s and the 90s. All of that food that you used to see on the screen, not a single bit of it was edible food of any kind.
Exactly.
It was all like something else. Like they bring in, some knockoff Rick Baker type guy to, create the artificial Big Mac for the camera. You know what I mean? So as good as it all looks and everything else, you gotta sometimes take a step back and realize that it's just an illusion.
It is. They went at the Little Caesars place. They had the picture up on the wall, this big giant mural of a pizza being held at a 45-degree angle on a cutting board. No cheese running, nothing is, nothing's going in right. Gravity apparently did not affect this pizza at any point in time. What I found out with talking through their executives is that, it's plastic. We use nails. I was like, how do you get a picture like that where that pizza's none of the cheese is running? Well, it's plastic and we use nails. What?
That's crazy. And it goes way beyond the whole, the hairspray. Because, they used to show on TV sometimes. They used to show, using hairspray to preserve the food and actually using the food. And, there was also, like in cereal commercials, they used to utilize glue instead of milk. because milk would actually at the time photograph blue. You know, I mean, it was so weird. Like all these little tricks. And they said, well, you can't actually use a tomato. This thing is actually made of like a rubbery sort of substance, and then you spray it down with something else to give it the illusion of having a bit of condensation on it and that kind of thing. And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? But no, it was all true. And I mean, nowadays, I guess they probably publicize that stuff because they do it differently now. I don't know how it's done now, but I'm sure there's something else to it because, even if you take a look at any of that stuff when one of these chains advertises or whatever else, they always have, fairly appealing looking stuff. You know what I mean? But even when you go there, I mean, everybody's always said, to joke about, if you take a look at a Big Mac, it doesn't look like the Big Mac on TV and all that. But I mean, even popcorn, shrimp, French fries, all that stuff, none of that stuff looks like it's supposed to. And it used to crack me up too that some people that were supposed to be vegetarians and this and that, they would go into the McDonald's buying French fries, and then it turns out that even the French fries are not too well, I hate to use this term, but they're not all that kosher, are they either?
Exactly. They even McDonald's just recently came out earlier this year and said that they were going to genetically modify potatoes.
Yeah. And meanwhile, that was practically the only thing that you saw there that wasn't being, completely treated and blah, 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 whatever. But, some people want their French fries, man. I don't know what to say anymore. I mean, honestly, when I do actually come across some of them, they still taste good to me, but I know that they're terrible. You know what I mean?
You got to think about it this way. If poop tasted good, would we all eat it?
Well, I think some of us would.
Therein lies the biggest problem.
I really do.
I'm sorry.
I'm not saying I would.
I've done some kinky things with some women before, but if it's coming out of your butt, I don't want it.
No, I understand. I'm with you. I'm just saying.
It could taste like apple friggin' pie, dude. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't know because I won't eat it.
So officially under the record, if somebody's third tasted like apple pie, you don't want any. Doesn't matter.
Nope.
Okay,
for the record, let it be known here on the airwaves.
Oh man. If anybody wants to join into this conversation,
I dare you.
I dare you. Exactly. 718-717-8296. If you got me on Skype and you're listening, you can just drop in. I'll add you in. I can't promise where the conversation will go.
So I know it's going to go this far south. I'll talk about some things on the radio before, but.
But you know what? I'm having a good time, and this is what I needed anyway, because I was having such a bad week as it was, and I know you were feeling some pressure from the project you were working on.
I'm always under pressure, buddy. I appreciate it, man. I do need a good giggle from time to time.
We gotta, you know what? You gotta laugh a little bit, because, I mean, I know it's not funny to see the sad state that the world is in and everything else, but man, the only thing that sometimes they can't seem to take away from me is my ability to laugh at something every once in a while, Everything else, so long as I breathe seems to be able to be taken away from me, even the air. So, the fact that I can laugh every once in a while and find something humorous, for one reason or another is just one of those things that I take as a blessing in life. I'm sorry.
Well, you're right. And the way we do things on a lot of my shows is, I have a vast library of almost 10,000 different types of sound effects and sound clips and everything. And people know, if you've ever listened to any of my shows, you know that I play sound clips quite a bit, and we have giggling fits and everything else. I do that for two reasons. Number one, it's entertaining for the listener, I think. I think that if every now and then, you can get a good sound clip that, makes you go like, you know what, you're right, or ha ha ha, or laugh just for a second, then it helps make a spoonful of sugar will help the medicine go down. The second reason I do that is for my own sanity. Because I'll completely lose it if I don't take a break every now and then and laugh. And I'm convinced of it. It's like, you watch yourself. It's like you're standing outside yourself, watching yourself go nuts. And if you don't step in and go, give yourself a good smack in the mouth, then it's going to happen. And I feel like I'm walking the edge of a knife each and every day with my own sanity, with having to deal with what's going on, not only in just my personal life, but also everything else that's affecting the entire rest of the country and the world, for that matter. And I feel this horrific burden upon my shoulders. It's like, and people say, don't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I ain't trying to, but it's there anyway. The backpack is strapped to me. I don't know what to do.
Right. And I mean, you know what? You can't help but take some of it because, you know, at the end of the day, you know that it's going to affect you and yours. You know, and if you don't care about yourself and you don't care about, you know, the people that are around you, your children, your wife, your friends, you don't care about any of them, well then you know what? You probably don't have any weight on your back. It's probably a real easy thing and you can just kill yourself and everybody else and giggle the whole way. But the fact is that, you know, those of us that actually give a damn, you know what? Yeah, we do need to take those little breaks. And, I've actually been on a couple of the shows with you where we've had some of those sound effects come in and that stuff cracks me up just because it's a good tension breaker. Especially during, you know, people get a little bit heated, they get a little excited, especially when you touch the wrong nerve. And that's really the last thing I want to make sure I cover with you because, you know, I was on a show with you, I think it was last week, and all of a sudden, this religious argument broke out between, I think it was a co-host from one of the networks, and I got lost in it because it was just so noisy and so crazy, because people got so angry about it. You know, after a little while, and I know you usually let people just say what they want to say, man. I know that you're not about censoring anybody or really trying to control people when they're saying something, whether you agree or not. And I know, you know, you don't let people put out disinfo and you know, deliberate nonsense, but at the same time, you let people speak their piece. And I try and do the same thing, but you know, but I'm a little more controlled. I let less people on the air at a time and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it got so heated between two people on your show. Mm-hmm. Well, it wasn't actually your show, but it was a show you were involved in. Let's just say that. And
I'm on one. I don't even know what shows I host anymore.
Yeah,
I'm on one every day. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, I get mixed up with which shows you're doing, to be honest with you. But you know, it's because I can't keep track of it all. You're doing a lot. But the thing is, you know which situation I'm talking about here, though, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just so intense and so ridiculous that at one point you had to actually put everybody off and let them cool off.
I've never had to do that until that time.
And I found it kind of remarkable because, you know, a lot of people, you know, that seem to be more familiar with you than I am, you know, seem to think of you as more of a hothead and everything else. And I mean, even you yourself say that you're pissed off and this and that all the time. But realistically, you're not about, you know, all of this nonsense and screaming at each other and you know, and just, whipping up things, you know, based on an emotional level and not having your facts straight. You're not like that. And, you know, first of all,
I try to embrace logic.
Well, yeah, you actually do. As much as, like I said, there's sort of a characterization of you sort of being the, you know, the more gruff kind of guy that's on those shows and everything else. I noticed that, you know, for a fact that actually you were one of the more controlled, logical guys, that I've ever heard on those networks. So, you know,
well, you know, when I started doing this and on my earlier, my YouTube videos and stuff, which is what I first started doing before, Austin Thomas discovered me and brought me over to, Egomizer Radio or Freedomizer, whichever one you want to call it. It was just me sitting here looking at my computer and ranting for an hour. And so I got the reputation of being angry. And to be honest, I am angry. That's my big secret, I guess. Everybody must know it. I am angry almost 24 hours a day. Yeah. There are a few hours when I sleep that I don't know if I'm angry or not.
Yeah, well,
most likely when I wake up in the morning, I'm generally pissed off. And there's a reason I stay that way. it's number one. If I stop, to me, quite honest, if I stop being angry at any point in time about what's going on in this world and what I'm trying to fight against, then I'm giving a foothold to the enemy. I should have been pissed off all my life. And for the most part I was, but.
Yeah, well, see, I'm with you there too. I mean, for a long time I was angry too, but I wasn't sure why. You know, I had a lot of rage, let's just say, but it was misdirected because I was still, you know, immersed in what we were talking about earlier, where we were kind of born into that system and had a misunderstanding of what was all around us, you know, but, not entirely our faults, but at the same time, I know, you have a sort of a regret about it just like I do. Like, you know, damn it, I wish I had knew this earlier, because if I did, you know, maybe I would have been able to do some other things besides what I have done. And look at the time I wasted, and look at the garbage I ate, and look at the nonsense that I, you know, invested myself into at certain points in time. I mean, even when, you know, and I bring this up sometimes about the whole 9/11 thing, you know, I hate to admit it, but I'm doing this, you know, almost like I'm standing up at an AA meeting. Yeah, my name's Chuck. I was an alcoholic. Okay. Here's the deal. Not an alcoholic. I will drink though. No problem. But, anyway, but the thing is, you know, when 9/11 happened, I was right on board with the flag waving. I was right away thinking, you know what, we ought to turn a good portion of the Middle East into a parking lot because they hit us. And, you know, and I thought that I was part of us. And I thought that I was part of the construct. And then after a little while, I started to realize that I wasn't. And I started to realize that, you know, not only, I mean, I knew that they lied to us sometimes. I knew that they lied to us a lot of the time. But, you know, it took a little while for me to really understand that they were lying to us all the time.
All the time. And
in fact, they were lying to us on top of the lies and then trying to confuse us a little by telling us a little bit of truth sometimes and then lying to us some more. You know, and once I got that into my thick skull, because I do have a thick skull, you know, and that might be because I'm Sicilian and Irish. I'm not sure, but I'm going to blame it on that right now.
I think at least blame it on the Irish.
Well, yeah, we could just leave it there.
No, being an Irish-Scottish mix, then yeah, I know all about.
Oh, then you're just as stubborn as me. Good. Okay. Yep. But the perfect thing here is that you know, it made me realize that I had been living under a delusion. And once I got that far, it took a few years after that 9/11 thing, though, because I was having a visceral emotional reaction, and I was very much sort of cowed by the hurt. You know, my mistake, my bad, I'm sorry. You know, but
I can totally understand and identify with that, man. I had 2 kids in school just a couple blocks away, and right at that moment in time, I was, like I always was in the mornings, most times, listening to Mancow, another one of my influences, Mancow Muller of radio fame and all that. And I was listening to him, and I had, right at that moment in time, I had 2 different TVs in my living room. Well, actually, I had 3. One was for video games, and I was really into sports and watching football and everything else. Mm-hmm. But so football day came on, you had all 3 TVs going on and different games on each one, so I could watch them all at once. I was a little bit obsessive at that point in time. And
okay.
and then it happened. And so, you know, I've got, you know, 3 different news channels on, plus the radio as the first plane hit, and then when the second plane hit, I saw that, and I was just like everybody else. It scared the living shit out of me. It really did. I nearly packed up the 2 younger kids and walked up to the school to go get my other kids out.
Mm.
You know, I was text messaging the wife and everything else. And what should we do? Is our country under attack? I don't know. Should I go get my kids? What should I do? And you know, I was freaked out. I was just like you, man. I was scared and reacting upon an emotional reaction of watching the greatest tragedy to hit American shores since Pearl Harbor.
Right. You know, and I tell this story a little differently, but it's just about the same thing. I only had one child at the time, but she was in a preschool. And I was in New Jersey. you know. So by the end of that day, I had tried to get into New York City and was denied access trying to help people get out of there. You know, I was actually going to go up there and try and dig people out, but they weren't letting anybody else in. And, you know, I ended up having to send supplies in there and everything else and wound up being able to look over the river and look at this tremendous dust cloud afterwards. But as it was happening in that morning and as it was unfolding, you know, there was a couple of amazing things that now stand out to me. You know, first of all, the way that it all went down and the sort of shockwave that it did send throughout most of the country. But you know what else? The contrast that was occurring right then and there. And over the next couple of days, because I'm going to tell you something real quick. I was working, I was managing a gas station and convenience store, right? And at that time, you know, there was a lottery machine in there. While this was all unfolding, when the second plane was hitting the towers and everything else, and I was sending my wife to go get my toddler because I was watching armored vehicles rolling down streets because I was right there among some military bases and things, which had gone on alerts where gates weren't normally guarded, but now there were guys with M16s, and all this kind of you know, stuff was happening, and every single broadcast medium was tuned to New York City, and then the Pentagon. And all of this was happening. There were people still coming in very calmly, disregarding the entire situation and just playing their lottery numbers. And then the interesting thing was, I don't know if you recall this, but right afterwards, within a very short amount of time, a plane went down, you know, just outside of New York City, and crashed into a residential area. Okay, and that day in New Jersey, so many people played the New Jersey Pick 3 number representing that plane's flight number, that it actually caused something that would normally cause you to win like $300 on a Pick 3 ticket to end up with like $7. And not only did they do it during the day, but they did it at night. The same thing, you know, which really stuck with me because it was like the ghoulish nature, the addictive nature, the sort of, you know, crowd think nature of the people around me really stuck with me. But the thing was, it didn't occur to me how bad it was. It just seemed to be a thing in bad taste at the time. But later on, the more I thought about it, it was more like about how people are just so controlled by the programming around them. But yeah, you were scared to death too, and so was I. You know, and you had probably a similar sort of reaction where it was like, we need to get these bastards who did this to us. And you know what's funny? I think that you and I are still retaining that, except we kind of figured out that it didn't happen to be exactly the bastards they first told us it was. You know?
Yeah, and they're the whole thing with 9/11, man, is, and I'm beginning to even, I know I saw it with my eyes on the television, but I'm beginning to doubt whether or not there are even people on that plane, or either one of the planes. New evidence keeps turning up, and the more and more, and the vast black hole of information that is the entire 9/11 investigation. I'm not talking about the official one. I'm talking about the one that each and every one of us do on a daily basis, at least. We've watched the YouTube videos. We've done the reading. We've looked at the NIST report. Everything else. None of it adds up. Not a bit of it.
Yeah. See, this is my contention about it. Yeah. Go ahead.
We're supposed to just accept it as if it were gospel. You know, as if this is just the way it is. That's the government said so that's it. But we've had no investigation into it, and if you start to speak out against it, then all of a sudden you're this crazy twoofer. Oh, you're just insane. You have no cognitive capability of having a rational thought. No, it's my cognitive capability of having a rational thought that brings me to question this.
Yes, he does.
I bore witness to this.
Right? Did you?
I did not want to. I did not ask for it. But I bore witness to this horrific tragedy. I watched the people jumping out of windows. Okay?
Right.
That wasn't fake.
No.
Now, these planes being fake or real, the implosions that brought down these buildings And if you look at science and look at you just pretty much basic physics, guys. I mean, you can learn this in friggin' 7th grade. I did. You can see that those buildings were imploded. They did not just all of a sudden collapse because they were structurally damaged. Even the scientific recreations of these actual planes hitting the building show that they couldn't have caused enough damage to bring it down.
Yeah, and did you see that recent clip about the opening of the memorial and the architects and engineers?
The only cemetery in the United States that you have to pay to go into?
You got it. And,
now, are they charging everybody, or do they let the families come in for free? Because if they don't let the families come in for free, then I'm sorry, that's fucked.
Well, I hear you there, and I'll tell you something else. The fact that they have these pouches of remains, this stuff still, it disturbed me from the moment I heard about it, and it wasn't this week. I think it was like 2 weeks ago that they were talking about bringing in these 3 caskets with these pouches of unidentified remains. And it stuck with me that there were family members there that had black tape over their mouths protesting the fact that they had no input about the disposition of these remains. On the one hand, I can see that there is a logical reason as to why they can't sit there and identify every single bone shard that happened to be in there. Because, it would require a lot of testing and this and that and the third thing. But you know what? With the amount of money that we waste on so many other things, I can't see why that would be so much worse a waste than we already are engaged in, first of all. But second of all, this whole clip that went around recently about the architects and engineers handing out these alternate brochures, in protest to the official story. If you watch that one news clip that made the rounds, I played it on my show a couple days ago. They pretty much equated every single thing to being a truther, and how this stuff just pretty much resonates in the echo chamber of the internet, and it's only these people that have these right-wing anti-government sort of conspiracy-minded individuals that want to accept this based on no evidence whatsoever, because we already know what happened and everything else. And it's just like those who deny that JFK was killed by Oswald, and it's just like those who question that Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, by James Earl Ray, and it's just like those who, and meanwhile, we'll talk about alien abductions.
Martin Luther King was killed by James Earl Ray under order from the federal government. This was proved in court in 1999.
Well, see, here's the thing. James Earl Ray actually entered an Alpert plea when he was brought into court and was trying until the time he died to get himself a retrial. And the case you're talking about in 1999 was a civil trial where they proved that there was government elements as well as local elements who were tied to organized crime, et cetera, that were all integrated into a conspiracy. But you know what? Even the U.S. government stated that there was a conspiracy to kill Martin Luther King Jr., which is not a conspiracy of one, namely James Earl Ray, because the House Select Committee in 1979, not only did they rule that the JFK assassination was in the upper 90th percentile likely the result of a conspiracy, but the MLK assassination was as well. So the official government explanation doesn't even jive with this nonsense of them mocking those of us who understand that there was a conspiracy here. And it was astounding to me and aggravating. Not only because of all the time that I spent on the one subject, but I mean the fact that that questioning your government turns you into one of these people who refuses to accept facts. And it's just like flipping it on its head. It's like, I'm going to tell you that you're crazy because I've decided you're crazy, and the only standard I have for crazy is the one I've made up. And it just made me angry beyond belief. I mean, not to mention the monstrosity of that memorial to begin with. You know?
Yeah, and then to find out that they want to charge people, number one, to top it all off, that they want to charge people to go to this. They want to make money off of this. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. What's going to be the big indicator to you here?
Well, see,
we're not even 15 years removed from watching that horrific event, from watching those people leap from the tower and hundreds of stories up because they would rather die than get crushed to death.
Right.
They'd rather splatter upon the pavement than get crushed to death. Now, to put this in a personal perspective, everybody out there in listener land, for Pete's sake, what would you do? If you're being in choice of either being crushed to death by thousands of tons of exploding and falling, melting steel and rock, or would you rather splatter upon the pavement?
It's a hell of a thing.
And why should anybody ever be put into making that choice? I mean, how horrific of a choice could that be? And then let's say that you made this choice and you died. Your family grieves your loss, mourns you, but the government keeps your remains for a good, 13, 14 years, and then decides that they're going to put you underneath of the very building that you leapt out of because you didn't want to be crushed. And then they want to charge everybody to come and pay any respects.
Oh, yeah, but they are allowing at least the families to go to the chamber, which is 70 feet under the ground, to be able to visit with these pouches of randomly mixed remains. That's, that's a consolation, I guess. Of course, I'm being sarcastic here. And I'll tell you something else that I find also revolting, and as far as the profiteering off of tragedy that occurred there. Regardless of what you think about how the towers came down, regardless of what you think about who actually lit that fuse, regardless of what you think about the airplanes or anything else, yeah, there is a human tragedy element here. And, the sounds of those individuals, hitting that pavement, has never left my mind. That is something that we were hearing live, at certain points. The fact that there were pictures published, within days, there were booklets being sold, people were profiting off of this right away. And this has nothing to do with the, crazy conspiracy theorists on the internet. The internet was not even the big factor it is now. It wasn't a matter of, a whole mess of us having shows like this or being bloggers and all that. The blogosphere was yet to actually really truly rise. And, you know for a fact that, this stuff didn't really proliferate as it has until later. But, you can remember those booklets and everything being circulated and the covers of a couple of New York newspapers and family members getting angry because they were able to actually recognize their loved ones leaping out of these windows because there were pictures published of these individuals descending. Whether they fell or they leaped or whatever else the explanation was, truthfully, we will not know. But it does appear as though many of them made a conscious decision to leap. So I'll tell you what, let's just think for a moment, even if only 5 or 6 people got to deal with that particular horror, is it not cruel and unusual to have already endured that, to have to be confronted with newsstands all over your city, containing photographs of the suicide or the murder, depending on how you want to look at it, of your husband, wife, child. Is that not enough? Yep. No, we have to memorialize it and sell tickets.
Yep.
This is what's going on. And you're 1,000% right when it comes to this.
Well, as far as the entire corrupt prison state of New York is, and it is. I went to New York when I was a very young man, and I knew then, at that moment in time, for the 3 days that I spent there, even though I did get to see Andrew Dice Clay do stand-up, which was pretty rocking, I knew I would never return. My son went there with his choir. He's involved in choir, football, baseball, basketball, straight A, honor roll, valedictorian, all that. Mm-hmm. They had an opportunity to go to New York. This was probably one of the contributing factors to, no, it's not probably, it really was one of the contributing factors as to why I got divorced. because I would not support it. I did not want my son going to a prison. And that's what New York has become. It's a prison for profit system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when they have laws there that you can, if you have the intent to annoy a police officer, or the intent to harass, not actually doing the annoying or not actually doing the harassing, but the intent, then that's a felony. That's punishable by 4 years in prison there.
Well, I wasn't aware of that. I did live there for a while, and I've got to tell you that the characterization of it as sort of a prison type setup is not unfair.
That law was just actually signed into law last November. I'm actually an administrator on a page about that law itself. And we tried to get awareness about it and get people to repeal it. And unfortunately, New York seems to be full of a majority of people who just don't want to pay attention. Well, they're still trying to live the American dream, and they haven't really realized that the American dream is now the American nightmare.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, we're down to the last 10 minutes, okay? So
holy crap, where'd the time go?
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
Talking for a half hour.
Everybody says that to me. I don't know why, but even though I don't run commercials and I don't play music or anything else, it seems as though 2 hours just vanishes when I'm on the air. I don't know where it goes, but I want to make sure that before we get going, and also stay tuned after me, because What Matters Worldwide Live will come on with Vince Easley. He'll be on after me. Yep. And stay tuned. I have no idea what he's got planned, but it's always something to listen to. Check him out, and Double Cross Radio will come on after that, I believe. But before we get going, I do want to let people get at least a chance to get a handle on your many projects. So, without any further ado, go ahead and let us know where they can let everybody know where we can find you, because you're all over the place, but let's get some specifics.
All right, I'm a spastic mess of useless knowledge, but what we have coming up on Friday night, I'm not quite sure. On the Friday Night Super Show, you can get that at Truth Emerges Radio on Blog Talk Radio, or NWO Truth Radio, NWOTruthRadio.com. We'll take you right there to that. As far as Monday goes, I've been pounding my brain all day with this one, but we're coming up with part 2 of our series on who are you really voting for. We have that working for us. Date night with the Constitution on Tuesday nights, on NWO Truth Radio at 10 p.m. Central. We'll be discussing the Constitution. We kind of went off the rails this last week because we had Brandon Council. I was finally able to get in touch with him and get him back in the air. We had to Skype him in and everything else, but I piggybacked him. But we got him in. It was great to have him there. So we kind of got off the Constitution last week and just pretty much celebrated the walking encyclopedia that Brandon Council is. And I do promotions and run ads and make ads for every single show that we're a part of on NWO Truth and Truth Emerges. I do these things free because, that's what gets people to the shows. If you hear an ad about a show that sounds interesting and the people that are talking into it are making you pique your interest, then maybe you'll check us out. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll just ignore. I don't care what you're saying. And that's okay. If that's really what you want, be blind in your servitude. I'm also getting ready. Our big promotion's going to come. We have a big contest that's going to be starting coming up on Truth Emerges Radio here within the next few days. Actually, it'll be starting up on Memorial Day is when I plan to launch it. And I'm going to give all your listeners here a free insight. The tinfoil hat contest.
Oh.
We all get told that we're wearing tinfoil hats all the time. I want to see how creative our people can get. So we want to have the tinfoil hat contest, and the winners will be we'll determine exactly just what the grand prize of all that is. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be money or anything like that, but because I'm a broke motherfucker, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, well, me too. Otherwise, I would try and chip in with you or something. Because that sounds like a great contest. And, wow, I wish I had that idea myself. I would do it. Because I'm sure I'd come up with some interesting stuff for my people listening.
Well, we're going to set it up. I'm going to set up a page and everything for it, for the tinfoil hat contest, and an event page. So it'll be up daily, and people can get invited to it. And all you got to do is post your pictures of you with your best tinfoil hat, the best one, the most creative ones that you can come up with. And by each week, I will be putting those up. So when we broadcast on the air on each and every show, you and your picture of your tinfoil hat will be on there if you are that week's winner. So
nice. That's a great idea.
Well, it's a good way to try and interact with your audience, and I really want to be able to do that. I really want to get our audience involved in what we do at Truth Emerges, and so Renegade Smith is actually the guy that came up with this idea, and I've taken it full bore. I've got all sorts of things prepared and ready to be launched. It's just we want to do it a matter of time. It's going to run from Memorial Day to the 4th of July, ladies and gentlemen. So.
Yeah, and real quick, Renegade Smith is a musician, so, you can find him, check him out. I think he's up on the SoundCloud. You can find some of his work.
Definitely. He did the last Voice for Liberty song. It took him almost a year and a half to write this song for me. And I didn't ask him to, but he did, and I listen to it every time before I go on air. It's like my inspiration to me.
Yeah, he's a pretty wild guy too, man. He's another guy who seems pretty pissed off most of the time. But it's all right though. Yeah, I mean, definitely, and I'm really glad that I've been able to participate with you guys on a few shows and have a couple of you guys come over here. I mean, I've had James come on, and a couple of the other guys have dropped in briefly with me. But I really wanted to get you on because. I gotta say, man, I knew that you and I would have a really easy kind of conversation, and it would give us both a break from some of the stuff I knew what we were, preparing to do for our shows, things like that.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate every opportunity I get to come on air and, try and help people understand what's going on. It's heartbreaking to me on a personal level to see it every day, but to be able to have the opportunity to come on air and let people know it, and to be in the position that I'm in with being able to do that on a daily basis, and people really don't mind it. So it's kind of like, hey, winning.
Oh wow! I can't believe you brought that one up. Winning, yeah. Yeah, I love that. You know what? I was actually a subscriber to his little channel when he was doing that and everything. That was so funny. And
it was. But we can use that term. That term just doesn't have to apply to Charlie Sheen, ladies and gentlemen. We can use that term all the time.
Exactly.
Really.
We can adopt some of this stuff if it works for us, and definitely that works for us. And you know what? If one more person just begins to think for themselves just based on some of the stuff we were talking about tonight, if one more person just happens to open their eyes or become just a little more aware, then you know what? We are winning.
Winning.
That's
Word.
it.
That's for sure, man. That's a thing that Austin Thomas and I have really taken a kindness to that phrase. We use it a lot, but it's true though. Every time that I can open up at least one person's eyes, or I can make at least one person understand, and you don't have to understand the whole big picture yet. I don't even understand the whole big picture yet, and I have a firm grasp on what it is.
Yep.
But you don't have to, as long as you open your eyes to at least one little thing. The truth will set you free, man. It's 10 times more addictive than crack cocaine. 10 times. I sleep maybe 4 hours a day. Why? And I'm on the radio maybe 4 hours a day. Why? I ain't working the rest of the time.
Oh! Thanks again, man. Have a good night. Stay tuned for What Matters Worldwide Live on Spy.TV Radio. At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, that guy, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, pistols and fondle slap of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the cartoon comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously,